Okay, we'll call the Tremont Planning Board meeting of June 28th to order at 6:02. Roll call, we have Lawson Wilson, Beth Gott, myself, Mark Good, CEO John Larson, our guest of honor tonight, Beth Wolf from Climate to Thrive, and members of the public, or member of the public, Jane Ashworth. Jeff and Brett both let John know this afternoon that they were unable to make it, so I'll take a motion to excuse their absences.
I'll make a motion to excuse Brett Witham and Jeff Young from tonight's meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and second on the table to excuse Brett and Jeff from the meeting. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
3-0, okay. Minutes of the regular planning board meeting, June 7th, 2022. I saw one thing. Town manager Jesse Dunbar. Jesse wasn't at that meeting.
No.
No.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. I don't know, Kate does the minutes from the
Yeah.
recording, so
Yeah.
she did make this one mistake once before where she thought John was Justin Seavey, or Justin Seavey was John, let's put it that way, which brought a
Right.
big smile to his face. So what I think I'll do, Kate, I'm sure you're listening, is I'm gonna take the photo of people, back of people's heads and send them to you, so that you can identify them that way. How's that? Anyway, anybody else see anything with the minutes? Otherwise, I'll
I didn't see anything.
take that amendment.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with the amendment on paragraph 2B to remove town manager Jesse Dunbar from the list of attendees.
I'll second that.
Motion and second on the table to approve the Tuesday, June 7th minutes as amended to remove town manager Jesse Dunbar from being present. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay. Continued discussion on solar fields, and we invited Beth here tonight because we had a lot of questions. Beth, I don't know what you've been told, but essentially, like other towns in Maine, we realize we don't have these standards for solar arrays, solar farms, whatever you want to call them, and we started discussing it, and we, along with having questions of where we want to go with this and that sort of thing, there were even some suggestions by at least a couple members that maybe we don't even want to have commercial solar farms here in Tremont. So that's basically the background. We don't, like Bar Harbor, I say they have it divided to accessory and principal use. So we're not concerned about what you would define as accessory use. Okay, when people want to put solar in their roofs, a small array in their yard, or businesses, that sort of thing, fine. That's probably CEO stuff more than anything. But we are wondering about developing standards for larger commercial or principal use arrays. I have some questions. I'm sure you guys too. I mean, somebody want to jump in, or I have a couple right off.
Fire off. Yeah.
Okay.
See how it goes, where it goes.
It's my understanding that there are grid connectivity issues over on this side of the island as compared to the Bar Harbor side, where there have been some upgrades made to the grid, and as such, it's less attractive to developers, I would say. Any idea on if there's going to be an upgrade and what that timeline may look like?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. The grid on this side of the island is a lot older than it is on the Bar Harbor side. They had a major power outage over there about 10, 12 years ago, and the power company, which was Mera at the time, decided to upgrade that entire line on that side of the island. So Mount Desert and Bar Harbor's major grid infrastructure has been upgraded and has the capacity to take up a lot more solar than the west side of the island does right now. And right now, the way the laws work at the PUC, if a developer wanted to install a large array on this side of the island, or anywhere in Person territory, they would have to pay the grid upgrading costs, which are excessive for old infrastructure. It's really expensive, and that alone prohibits a lot of solar development. That rule,
Would that mean they would have to upgrade the entire grid or just sections of it?
the entire grid that would be needed to take up that electricity. So if a new transformer needs to be put in, they would have to pay for the upgrade for that new transformer and the lines.
With lines too, that's
Yeah.
what, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's a great question. And so that rule right now is actually under review at the PUC. So moving forward, and it's not concrete whether or not that will change, but that has the possibility of shifting in the next 18 months or so as they're reviewing these rules around renewable energy interconnection. So I think it's a great idea that you are looking at developing a solar ordinance. I don't think there's any need for a moratorium right now to prevent that type of solar coming to Tremont for the near future, but it is good to start developing parameters around where you want to see this development happening if the community wants that.
I'm sure you know that any ordinance that we propose would have to be approved by voters.
Yeah.
So really we have, unless we have a special town meeting, which, you know, may not go, there are really two windows, that being the November elections and our May town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think there's a need to get something ready for November?
No, I don't know how long your process will take, but I don't think, if November seems rushed, I don't think you need to rush. We've been having issues with interconnection for larger projects for a really long time, and I don't see that shifting in the next 12 months. But I do want to emphasize that it is under review right now, and so it could change.
Is it possible that the PUC would change the rules so that projects aren't responsible for the cost?
Exactly. So ratepayers, that it would be
Right.
For level 2, which is essentially 2 megawatts and under, which in land use terms is about 10 acres or under. Those projects would potentially, if the PUC decides to make this change, then ratepayers would cover that cost instead of the developer themselves, and that would help encourage renewable energy development.
You mentioned the size of the project. That was a question I had too, is how much land is really needed to have a commercially viable array?
That's a great question. So developers right now are, where they can, building to the maximum allowed by law under the PUC, which is about 2 megawatts for commercial projects. And so that's what you're seeing in Bar Harbor right now. That's 1.99, so that just comes in right under that level 2. And then if it's a utility scale, which we would not see here, that'd be like 10 megawatts and above. And so roughly speaking, it takes about 3 acres, 3 to 5 acres per megawatt to construct solar.
So is there a gap between the 2 megawatts and the 10 megawatts?
Yeah, so 2 megawatts is a commercial scale, and so that would be by developers looking to build these for a profit. The utility scale would be built for utility
Power
use.
plant.
Yeah, essentially,
Yeah.
it'd be a power plant versus like yeah,
And you don't think that we would see, so that's 10 megawatts and above.
yeah.
What about the between 2 and 10?
That doesn't really exist right now. The PUC only allows up to 2 megawatts for commercial scale solar,
Okay.
and then it's a completely different animal when you're looking at utility scale.
Okay.
And there's, yeah,
So they only allow right now up to 2 megawatts, really. And give me an idea, 2 megawatts, what does that power? I know what a megawatt is, I know what a watt is, I know what a kilowatt is, but what does it really power, and I know a lot of variables in it.
There's a lot of variables. So I've been working on the Higgins Pit project, which is gonna be, depending on certain parameters, around 1.5 megawatts. And that is enough to power almost all of the municipalities, like school, the municipal building, the sewage, water plants. I know that Bar Harbor is a very different place than Tremont, but roughly 7.5 kilowatts per household. So doing the math there,
That's what you figure, 7.5 watts per household,
kilowatt.
kilowatts.
Kilowatts per household, so translating that into, should have brought my calculator.
So that's like 100 houses is 750 kilowatts, so you get like 200 houses
Yeah,
out of a
yeah, a
array that
little,
size?
yeah, a little under 200 houses.
And is that per day, per household per day?
No, that's annual.
Annual, okay.
The Tremont Municipal Array out back, which covers most of our load, is I think 350 kilowatts, does that sound right?
Yeah.
I think it's about 350 kilowatts.
When you say most of our load, we're talking about this building, the school, and nothing else?
I think
Or
the library.
Public Works,
Public Works, I think the library is town-owned.
library's town owned,
I think it covers the library.
Harbor Masters building?
Uh-huh. I mean, it
Yeah,
offsets our electric bills, and I think that it's most. I don't know if it's 75% of it, or 85% of it, or exactly what that accounting is, but it's helpful to think that, like, for a town our size, we're talking about 350, for Bar Harbor, we're talking 1.5.
So, if I can multiply, essentially, you could have a 6 to 10 acre lot that produces up to 2 megawatts.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
You don't need
And
to-
we definitely have that.
Yeah, you don't need
Right.
as big a lot as I was expecting.
Right, yeah, I mean, there are actually a lot of, I mean, I could, if I clear cut my land, we could just about squeeze that on there. I don't know where we put our house, but.
Now, how about the lifespan of panels themselves?
Yeah, so I think they're insured for 27 years, but they're expected to last up to 40.
Okay, and this is a question kind of about decommissioning. Is there a lifespan to a particular site, or can you just, as panels go bad, you can keep replacing them and, okay?
I think that is the idea behind the infrastructure, the racking and the materials that they use definitely outlast the panels, and so the idea would be, if in 40 years the community wanted to put more panels on, or the developer, whoever owns the site, they could.
So the reason you might want to have a decommissioning plan is in case financial problems with the company, or?
Yeah, I would, yeah, you would want a decommissioning plan, and recycling does exist for these panels, and so right now it's expensive, but I think in 10, 15 years we're going to see a completely different landscape for it. Right now it's about $20 per panel to recycle solar.
Any other questions, anyone? Okay. What do you think about wind generators? We don't have any standards for those either. We do have standards for telecommunications towers. I mean, at one time, that was the hot item, but it seems like that's dropped off. But from attending virtually your recent workshop, I see they want to put some up in the high school.
Yeah, we're looking at
Horrible place.
some small rooftop generators. I think those are about 8 feet tall, and they're designed to go on like buildings like the high school, like these big industrial roofs. I am not an expert when it comes to wind, and whether it's offshore or on land. So I can give you, I can't really give you more than.
I guess it was just a general question, you know, while we're developing standards for the solar projects, is that something that we should be
Huh.
concerned about as well?
Yeah. It's hard to imagine, like, writing an ordinance for technology that's not fully developed. Like, that, we could write an ordinance for tall wind turbines,
Right.
but that seems, like, it's sort of not viable here. I think that it is possible that within the next 10 or 15 or 20 years, technology is gonna change to make rooftop and even like small field wind turbines viable. But it's hard to know what those are gonna look like and how they would fit in Tremont.
Yeah, right now at the small scale, they're not economically viable. Unless you're talking about like a really large wind farm or something big industrial off the coast, they're not, the cost per watt to install doesn't make sense.
Right.
For like a developer, the way it does around solar right now.
But if some landowner wanted to put up a 100-foot tall turbine, could they? I think so.
I think they could, yeah.
They could.
I think prohibits it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything about that. Now,
Yeah.
no, I don't have the telecommunications one there.
The only thing that would restrict it is the definition of a structure says anything in or on the ground.
Right. So I mean, it would have to
So
conform
there
to.
would be a 35-foot height limit.
Right.
Oh.
There would be a height limit.
Totally. Right.
But that's not true for communications towers.
Correct. But this wouldn't be a communications tower.
Because we have a communications ordinance.
Right.
Right.
Determines what height.
Okay, so nobody could build anything other than, higher than 35 feet right now.
The definition of a structure is anything in or on the ground used to shelter people, animals, goods.
Well, that doesn't fall under that.
Yeah, so, I mean, that argument could be made that it
Yeah,
doesn't.
unless you're
belong.
raising sheep under your wind tower.
So if you've got a good lawyer who argues that it's not a shelter,
Are there lawyers around?
not today, but if a project like this came across our desk, we would be they'd be lining up at the door.
It's a good question and something definitely like worth
Yeah.
preparing for, yeah.
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 So, if I could add this bit of knowledge, in Southwest Harbor, the Higgins Antique lot
Mhm.
Yes,
is actually owned by Versant Power.
the whole lot.
Yeah. And they're going to install a large transformer. I think it was 5,000 square feet facility there.
I didn't know what they were gonna do, but I knew Edward Higgins had to leave.
It's leaving, huh?
Yeah.
Huh.
And so, right, so if, I don't know what happens in a 5,000 square foot facility, but like, if suddenly our grid became super robust and they could plug in a huge wind turbine, I could imagine our flat Tremont exposed to the prevailing southwest winds being, and relatively close to some population centers. Somebody could want to do that.
And you'd want your solar ordinance in place before that's
Right.
installed. I don't know what the timeline is for that. I've heard around 5 years, for the grid updates for the side of the island, but I don't know the specifics.
Yeah.
Now, somebody said, I don't know if it's Lawson or Kevin, that you helped develop the ordinance for Bar Harbor, is that correct?
Yeah, I worked with the town,
You work-
around the solar ordinance.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, from what I saw, it was pretty good, but I had a couple questions about that too. In the site plan review section, general review standards, that would be section 125-67. Read the blue here. The panel/roof flash arrays of the solar photovoltaic system, principal use, located over live ground cover with sufficient space between the panel arrays and above ground to allow sunlight for vegetation to grow shall be exempt from lot coverage calculations due to sharing of the space. Was that something that was discussed a lot about it being exempt, and why did it end up this way? I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah, because the way solar is built and designed, it's not an impervious surface. The panels are, but the way they're constructed on the site, it allows vegetation to grow underneath it. And so that is, you could still have agriculture around the panels if you design it correctly. And so there was, the reason that that's in there is because of how Bar Harbor treats lot coverage and impervious surfaces. And so if this wasn't the case, then the square footage that the panels would be considered like lot coverage, and that would just shift the entire viability of constructing on certain lots. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, but it leads me to another question. Okay, what's the size of a panel? 15 square feet or so? Or?
That's a good question. Yeah, I guess like 7 by 3.5.
Yeah, 21 square feet, whatever. Okay. Anyway, that's an impervious surface, and it's raised up on something,
Yeah.
structure of some kind,
Mhm.
and rain is going to, if those weren't there, rainwater would saturate throughout the entire 21 square feet or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Whereas if the panel's there, it's going to hit the panel and run off,
Mhm.
and it therefore concentrate more water in a certain area.
Mhm.
Are there concerns about erosion?
Yeah, so the DEP has a lot of requirements around solar arrays and stormwater buffers and erosion measures,
Right.
prevention measures around solar panels. So if somebody applied for permits to construct an array, they would have to adhere to all of the requirements that the DEP already have in place around solar panels and erosion. So it's been thought about at length, and there are already regulations in place to manage.
So the DEP already has regulations in place to deal with this sort of thing. So anybody that proposes a commercial solar array would have to go through the DEP process as well?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Permit by rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty easy to get through, right? In fact, it's real easy to get through.
But if our ordinance sort of pointed to the DEP standards, we could sort of lean on them for
Yeah, yeah.
erosion control measures and,
Or you could even put in the ordinance
Stormwater.
site visits required, or, you
Yeah.
know, cause your landscape is gonna be different on every site.
Right, yeah.
right,
yeah.
I'm just thinking about like this array versus the EMR site array feels pretty different. And part of that is just age, but there's a lot more gravel and fill because the EMR site's on
Probably a lot under that.
we don't wanna know. Of course, here too, there's a lot under this and we don't wanna
Yeah,
know
on
that.
that landfill site.
But the Maine Audubon Society has actually kind of
Right.
created a really great resource.
We
for-
have it, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Mine's at home, but Lawson's right on the ball.
To help further address those concerns that you could incorporate into the ordinance.
And did they talk about setbacks?
And what would you say to a couple people who, on this board that said, even questioned, well, do we even want to allow these sort of projects?
What was that? You know, I guess I would say that we're moving into the future, and that having these projects on MDI, in my opinion, and, is a great thing. It's gonna add resilience to the community. We're gonna have sources of power generation if for some reason we get disconnected from the Versant grid, from the mainland grid. Like, it'll add resilience to our community. And so beyond the climate benefits, there's community benefits to these arrays. I would also say that each project has its own nuances, and so you're gonna wanna review each one to make sure it's a good fit for the community and have rules in place that support what the community wants. And so, if you want,
I think what the concern was, you know, okay, so like a gravel pit, already disturbed site is ideal maybe for something like this after the pit is no longer in operation.
right,
Okay, but clear cutting 5-10 acres of land to build one of these, the trade-off there doesn't seem to be quite right. Are you damaging the environment to try to improve the environment?
yeah, and it can seem really disjointed, the idea of having this green energy project and then clear cutting a forest. Yeah, I would incorporate as much emphasis around working on disturbed sites as possible in the land use ordinance. I know developers will say that the payoff for clear cutting a piece of land and putting up solar is about 5 years if you're just looking in terms of carbon, but there's a lot of other considerations. And so I think as a planning board, you're really gonna wanna like weigh and consider like what kind of impact it'll have on the environment, and then and what you want to see as the community. And are there areas that you want protected and that you can protect as a planning board? And are there other areas that you would want to encourage the development? And if you're able to zone it that way.
That was gonna be my question. You were talking about zoning actually,
Yeah.
so, okay.
Have you looked at the low impact solar siting design and maintenance? Solar siting design and maintenance, which the Maine Audubon lists as a resource created by Maine-based environmental agriculture NGOs. Do you know that?
Yeah, I have, and it's a really great resource.
Because it's possible that could provide some language that we could
I
prove.
would highly encourage incorporating some of that language into the ordinance.
The idea that Tremont could, with a few 10-acre projects, produce enough electricity to power all of the homes in Tremont, I think that seems pretty attractive and, you know, feasible. Not that I'm going to develop them, but it seems like it'd be nice to have an ordinance that,
Encourage that sort of thing, you're saying?
or allowed it. I'm not sure that it encourages it, but that it allows it, and it directs it, I guess is the other goal, because I think that it'd be nice, yeah.
Yeah, if you can get ahead of it, if you can get ahead of the developers and really strategically think about if these projects were to come to Tremont, where would you want them? And that's,
Can you put like 3 2-megawatt projects right next to each other?
theoretically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you do a lot, you'd have to have a lot of updated infrastructure, but
Right.
you could,
And the third one might be a lot more expensive than the first one,
yeah.
if,
Right now, as the rules are at the PUC, but that could change.
right.
Is there like a rule of thumb for a lifespan for a gravel pit, just curiosity? Depends on
Well,
the
I
pit,
mean, and it's
probably.
all according to the towns like Lemoyne, I mean, because we have to get licensed every year, and we have to, everything has to be, when you do use up an area, you have to slope
Reclaim it,
it,
yeah.
reclaim it, plant trees, which
Yeah.
we're in the process of doing at one of the pits right now.
In Lemoyne or here?
Lemoyne, there really isn't any pits here, I mean, there's stockpiles.
Like yards and
Yards.
piles.
Where you stockpile stuff, but
Yeah.
Like
Not-
on Ecoteka, that's what you,
That's that's more of a stockpile, although we did dynamite and we get ledge out of it, so I guess you'd call that a pit. But,
And are they like 5 to 10 acre, the ones that are in town?
one over here?
Yeah.
No, I think they're smaller, although
Okay.
I think the whole thing is like 250 acres. and
Right.
The whole lot that, if you put everything together, and some of it's already been subdivided.
Yeah.
Douglas did that before he passed.
Right.
But there really isn't a lifetime, unless you use all the gravel out of it.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
but you got some of those pits up in, like Hancock, I mean, they look like they go down for a mile, I mean, I wouldn't
Yeah.
wanna get around them.
It's a real quarry.
So, it's all according to how much material is in it. But I
Yeah.
do know that some of those in, Lemoyne have been retired
Yeah.
and I mean, that Hancock, is it Hancock Heights there, just as you go
Where
past
McQueen's have
Jordan?
their Esser pit.
Well, they, across from McQuinn's, there's that trailer park there.
Yeah, yeah,
And I know, my mother-in-law, Jen's mother-in-law, was one of the first, you have to be over 50 to have, and she's bought a modular.
Oh, cool.
And it was a pit, and they've just
Turn it into a,
turned it into
Neighborhood.
a neighborhood.
wow.
They reclaimed it.
Yeah. But I mean, Lemoyne's strict on,
So Myro's
Yeah.
pit, when McQuinn bought Myro's,
oh, Myros is a pit, oh, McQueen bought Myros?
yeah, a long time ago,
Is the cross still up?
8 million cubic yards of material.
yeah.
I don't even know what that number means. 8 million?
Yeah, some of
That's
the,
how much is in their estimate
yeah,
was, yeah.
Yeah, I think McQuinn paid $1 million for it, and he had an estimate done of the material, and it was 8 million cubic yards of material.
yeah.
So it all come from Lemoyne down here to the island.
Well, that seawall, those rocks, the park doesn't let you haul off, they're from Lemoyne.
Are they?
Yeah, we have state trucks go up and they load on big screenings when you have a huge washout. and
Yeah. oh,
Take them down there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of looked at some of the satellite views of
Sure.
the town, and I
Right.
saw some spaces where, looked like gravel pits or things that
Yeah.
had been disturbed. I don't know whether there's enough or it's even close enough.
I think the other possibility in the next 10 years, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's really happening in 5 years, but would be for people who have like 2 or 3 acre lots, and if there's some economic model where they're like, oh yeah, like we could be getting profit off of this, and we don't have a house on it, so like we're just gonna put up solar panels.
Stanley Electric, that building is
Right.
100 feet long, and he's gonna put solar panels on the roof.
Yeah.
I doubt that's gonna be more supply than he could use.
Correct, but then he can sell it to his friends and neighbors, or sort of, yeah.
Who's this?
Stanley Electric?
Stanley.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, Steve Stanley?
Steve Stanley.
Of course Steve would be.
I have a question. Looking through Bar Harbor's ordinance here,
Yep.
I don't see anything that deals with maintenance of these.
Ah, good point. I didn't see anything either.
Well, I did,
There's abandonment,
yes.
where if you don't maintain them for 365 years,
Yeah,
days.
Grass
Yes.
grows, weeds grow,
Right.
they have
We
to
did
be
have a thing on
maintained.
pesticides and.
Yeah, there
I
was something about
reading
that, using chemicals for cleaning under emergency operation maintenance plan, page 13 here.
That's emergency.
It says, general maintenance schedule for the SPVS,
maintenance.
including the replacement, removal of all major components or oil, list of cleaning materials and solvents.
Yeah, and then an integrated vegetation management plan.
Yeah, here we go.
That would be the lawn mowing, I think, John.
Yeah, I guess under E2, it says describe the use of control mechanisms to manage unwanted vegetation and promote desirable plant communities.
Goats. That's all about the goats.
Like, can you see a goat in Bar Harbor? I read that, and I go, well, could have put something different.
No, but I sure can in Tremont.
Yeah, you could, yeah, but not in Bar Harbor.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, maybe on the crooked road, but.
Well, maybe that's what we should do out here. Weren't the guys complaining about having to mow around these panels here?
Oh, I don't
There are
know.
services, I
Right.
mean.
What's that?
There
Yeah.
are services, they take their sheep and they graze them on different, solar fields.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
I think sheep would be better than
So
goats.
is that why that wording was used?
I think
I
it will.
kind of snickered to myself when I read that, so.
Um,
No, I thought it was well written. I mean, someone would have to think twice before putting one up, because the cost to remove it would be,
Right, yeah.
I mean, how do you know how much it's gonna cost in 10 years or 40 years to remove everything?
That, I don't know.
Probably estimate it now and
I mean,
then
in-
multiply by inflation, which is,
What they said, and they had to be bonded.
And then
Yeah.
the bond, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Let's just look that up. Now, in the definition, solar photovoltaic system principal use, it says one or more ground-mounted solar photovoltaic cells. Is there a reason you decided to specify ground-mounted? I mean, I'm sure that's the most common way to do it. I can't think of anything else other than rooftop type stuff, but
Yeah, I don't know that there
it
is.
just seems like it was unnecessary to put in there. It just.
well, I think that if it's roof mounted, then you've got a building that's sheltering something. And so now you've got to permit that.
Yeah,
That's the primary use.
As I understand it, the state of Maine has said that solar panels on residential dwellings don't require a permit.
yeah.
Right. The residential dwelling does. You've got to get a building permit to build a house, but
That comes into question about Steve Stanley's building, you know, it's not.
Does he need a
residential,
permit for
it's
that?
commercial.
yeah, right, I'm not
Delivery,
sure.
Southwest Harbor doesn't have any ordinance.
they don't have ordinance on it. Well, Elon Musk is what, making shingles?
I asked the
Uh-huh.
planning board,
And they said, we aren't
Just got an
interested.
estimate for our roof. I can imagine what Elon Musk's shingles gonna cost.
It's a pretty good idea, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
you're building a house in
Yeah.
10 years, I mean, and you put up solar,
Yeah, if you-
Shingles
if you
on the
got a
roof.
spot for the house, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it wouldn't
yeah.
do very good in Alaska, but.
We'd have to cut down a lot of trees to make it worthwhile. Anyway, other questions, concerns? Before we,
how's Trenton making out?
I'm sorry, what?
Trenton. They have.
They've got projects, right?
Yeah, they have some proposed projects. I mean, they'll, I think they're gonna continue to have a lot more projects than in Tremont. They have, these huge substations there, which is what really attracts the developers.
Is that going in across from the zoo?
The new solar development is right
Yeah.
around there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another, 2 megawatt project. Yeah.
Who's doing that?
It's a company out of Massachusetts. The name's escaping me right now. It's like, I'm gonna say the wrong name, so I don't know.
So a company like that, are they hoping to sell shares to consumers? Or are they hoping to sell power to the power company?
They're looking to sell power to consumers. So they generate net energy billing credits.
So it works like the Southwest Harbor dumps it.
Not quite. That is actually owned by the consumers, and so the equity in that is a lot better for the people that own shares in that. Climate to Thrive encourages community ownership as much as possible. The model that's prominent in Maine right now is the developer owned, which is like what we're seeing over on Knox Road and what we're going to be seeing in Trenton as well. And that'll offer a discount on power, but the majority of the equity ends up going to the.
So it'd be like Nexamp, so,
Yeah.
okay, which I've heard some concerns about lately.
Yeah, and so Nexamp, Amphion, Midcoast Solar, they're all very similar. Like their economic models are essentially the same. They're just different companies that are funded by investors, and they come in and develop solar and then.
guys, I don't wanna make any big decisions about the other two here,
Right,
but, it seems
we're not
like,
gonna, pass an ordinance tonight, but it seems like they're, like,
why not? We don't need no stinking voters, right?
that doesn't have to go in the minutes, Kate.
Yeah. That's John Larson.
Yeah,
I think at some point we need to move forward. And
Right.
It doesn't sound like we need to do anything for November.
right. But it does also, I'm sort of attracted to the idea of like getting something, taking advantage of what feels like a little bit of a window that we have right now where we don't have other big projects right in front of us. And,
Which means one more meeting.
right. And then we'll back to reviewing campgrounds and we'll do that for as long as another year and a half and then we'll, yeah. The one thing that sort of popped up to mind, and I think it's after going through the campground stuff, is about buffering and thinking about how this relates to our site plan review ordinance, which talks about buffering. And maybe that's enough, or actually probably our buffering standards need to get better defined no matter what. And if we addressed it in the site plan review ordinance, it would then also apply here and be clearer, easier for us to enforce.
Well, the other thing, reading this on fencing and stuff, you know, which is the worst eyesore, looking at the solar panels or looking at a
Fence.
fence that's
A
gonna.
wall.
Right.
Right. Is the fence that's required, is that for safety?
Yeah, I think,
It is.
one reason, yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I don't believe made it into the Bar Harbor ordinance that, I wish did, is having a gap underneath that.
It
That is here.
It is
Oh, it
in
is
there.
here,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it is
Yeah.
here,
Then-
right.
Yeah,
For
animals, small animals
yeah,
crawl under,
yeah.
Yeah,
they're
that is
five inches off the ground, but, yeah, I
But it's
believe.
it's for human safety,
Okay,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
is why there's any fence, because our array does not have a fence around it,
Yeah,
which I think is cool, but I mean,
But
we're in
I-
Tremont, we're like, we don't have
I
one.
think there's some electrical standards that require you
Yeah.
to have that, a fence around it. The same with communications towers, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
cell towers
Right.
and, you know,
Yeah.
radio
Right.
station towers and things like that. You always have to put up fences around for safety purposes, so.
I'll just, you know, we
But
should-
it could be like
Yeah.
a chain link fence that you see through.
Yeah,
right, but you're still looking at a fence, and
right.
And the argument of like, right, is a fence prettier than is a chain link fence better or worse to look at than a solar array? That's something we can't
Right.
answer that, like, who knows, like, everybody's gonna have a different decision.
Right.
Way to define that.
So you're saying, instead of having a separate solar ordinance, or instead of incorporating it into a separate solar ordinance, buffering standards, separate buffering standards, improve buffering standards within the existing site plan ordinance.
Right, I mean, I
or
think that
land use ordinance, yeah.
reading through this, I thought, oh, one of the gaps that this does not address is buffering. But it does say that the project has to, you know, abide by all of our other standards.
Yeah,
And so, that's great. Then it just means that our existing buffering standard,
needs
There's-
to be updated.
right. And just make it easier for neighbors to know what to expect and for the developers to know what is required and for us to know how to review it.
Any suggestions on how to proceed?
If we were gonna, who would write our draft?
Well, usually Collier reviews it.
Right, like, so, I mean, if our next step is to like, eventually, I mean, I guess what I would like is to prepare a draft, the planning board then approves and then sends to the select board for inclusion in the next warrant, whenever that happens.
Yeah, well, look what we did for the campground ordinance, okay? We basically threw some things together and then sent it on to, we sent it on to James, who then put it, made sure
Did
it
the
was
right-
okay legal
Right.
wise. It would be
And
the
so I
same
think
process.
I think that the next step would be to ask Jeff Collier to,
James,
I'm sorry, James Collier, to draft a solar ordinance based on
Bar Harbor ordinance.
this, yeah, maybe with a couple of tweaks where I would explicitly, I would incorporate some of this low impact solar siting design and maintenance instead of, because we don't really have, I guess we do have some zones, so we would choose which zones we want to allow it in at all.
Yeah, we don't have as many zones as Bar Harbor, which is.
We have more than Manhattan, apparently.
Oh, really? Harbor's more than Manhattan. That's a great statistic.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, there's five or six different zones for Town Hill alone.
Right. Okay.
John, you have any suggestions here or any comments? Since you're such a wise guy. I mean, you're a wise person, not a wise guy.
What do you think about, public hearing to see if the town is interested in a solar ordinance?
We talked about that.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
But before we have anything proposed, that's the thing.
I think it'd be better to have something proposed. To be able to say like, what we're considering is permitting 10-acre projects in these zones that, I don't know, whatever it is, like whatever it is that we're thinking about permitting. And requiring these implementing these standards.
You gotta have them read something first, or it's just gonna be a free-for-all.
Yeah, I don't
screaming at
really
us.
wanna like, is solar good or bad conversation, more like, is
We
this
see
the
how
right?
interested people are already.
Where does the comp plan stand? The comp
The new comp plan,
Being developed and will be presented to the committee in August. Being developed by somebody,
that's just the beginning. It won't be
Yeah.
ready to go to voters till, when do we decide?
next May.
spring.
maybe?
Yeah.
Not even spring,
Right.
probably.
Right,
probably
I mean,
fall.
but I think there'll be some public events, public hearings, like the public will start to be engaged directly with the comp plan next year.
The reason I asked that question is because the res biz zone now, in the old comp plan, it was suggested that
Right,
they changed that,
right,
Parts of it.
parts.
right.
So where are you gonna put these 10-acre?
Well, it becomes,
To me, as a
Okay.
resident, that would be
Do you-
my first question.
so-
Yeah.
Where are you gonna allow them?
I would
Right.
say,
Not in my backyard.
Mhm.
I would say.
Well, we won't put them in anybody's
I would
backyards.
say no.
They're gonna be allowed as long as there's nobody's back, it's not in anybody's backyard.
Well, you could start by minimizing the lot size.
Right, by saying, or by maximizing it, which is what we did at the campgrounds. Or didn't the campgrounds ordinance say that it has to be at least 10 acres or something like that, which then makes it,
I don't remember how many
what
acres
exactly
we
that was, but
said
it's.
exactly,
But then that goes back to your buffering, how much buffering are we gonna want?
Right.
So if you have a 10-acre lot and you have, around the
Big
whole perimeter.
100-foot setbacks.
And actually, you could, if you sited it on a 10-acre lot, maybe there's no visual impact at all.
That's right. Yeah.
No, I understand what you're saying, John. Basically, what you're saying, wait for the comprehensive, or do we want to wait for the comprehensive plan to do something like this? I don't know if we can wait that long.
Yeah, I think
And
that
who
we,
knows what's gonna happen with the comp plan?
and we could always amend it, or like,
Yeah,
we could,
yeah.
like, we could then say, oh, since the comp plan has been sign, now we're going to say, oh, not in this zone, in that zone, or we're gonna change it from 10 acres to 20 acres, or,
If the comp plan gets passed, there's gonna be some major changes to the ordinances anyway, is gonna be my guess.
So
Some of the
how
zones.
about, purely a suggestion, I don't know why I'm inserting myself in this, but if I were
Well,
to
good question.
identify every parcel in Tremont that was 10 acres or more,
Identify every parcel that's 10 acres or more.
yeah,
How would one do that?
Well,
Tax records wouldn't help.
Trio, which we use for tax system, keeps track of property sizes. So if you send a query in there to say,
right,
show me every parcel that's more than 10 acres, it would come up with
Right.
I mean, it'd be a pretty easy GIS,
yeah.
question we could ask our planners
Yeah.
to do that.
And there are certain zones where when we wouldn't want it anyway, like, commercial fisheries, maritime.
So we already talked about that, where GAC Road is a big field.
Right,
Yeah,
That would be exposed.
right. And then the question becomes wetlands in that
I
zone.
don't know about the impact, somebody might be able to answer that. What does the DEV consider installing it in a wetland, especially insignificant or not a significant wetland?
It depends on the square footage, like how many, I think above 15,000 square feet, they become a level two, a tier 2 project, and they have to start paying mitigation fees.
So you have to do that.
You have
But-
to,
Same-
if
But you could
if
do it, it just makes it more expensive, like you can,
Yes, you can
Interesting.
do it.
Even though you just have posts and the rays are not on the ground. That would be an argument for why don't you consider it lot coverage then?
It's a great question. That's
I
just
I kind of like the lot coverage part too. That's why I brought it up.
but the idea is that vegetation can still grow underneath it. The DEP is just really strict about wetland impact.
yeah.
I would encourage the planning board to have something in place, to not wait on developing this. You wouldn't want a developer free-for-all, which is, I think, the case right now. If the rules that the PUC change, you could be vulnerable to
Yeah.
that development
Right.
in places you
And
don't.
I actually was reading something today where there are some companies that are actually either seeking to purchase land to do these projects or to lease land for
Yeah.
these projects.
That's what they're doing with
Yeah.
a lot of farmland right now.
Yeah.
yeah, my mother-in-law, they're leasing part of her blueberry fields in Du Bois. A
Really?
solar
Oh,
company.
really?
A
For a
solar-
solar project?
Yep.
Huh.
Top of Ikataki Road.
Ikatika?
I highly doubt it. No.
Well, John, we don't have anything on the agenda for our next meeting, right?
July 12th,
It's the 24th, the meeting after that we,
the 26th.
Pointy Head
Right.
Campground.
pointy head, yeah.
Ugh.
So hopefully Jeff and Brett would be here.
Could we
and
ask,
Go ahead.
could we ask Attorney Collier for a draft by then? Is that appropriate?
Well, my only hesitation is further input or more specific input from the board
Right.
before sending something on.
Okay, so maybe,
Because
right,
James
yeah,
put up his feet, light up a cigar, and.
start the clock. And it'd be
Which he
great
says he
to have
does and thinks.
Brett and Jeff weigh in and for us to come up with a sort of somewhat clear request, a clearer request than we have tonight for Attorney Collier to say,
Yeah,
like,
I mean, we have something to go by. I mean,
Well,
Yeah, we can
we
start
have a
with
pretty
this,
good
but
structure.
let's say like, I
Those of us here are kind of in agreement, we kind of like what Bar Harbor has done.
Right.
Yeah,
think it's a great place to start,
Yeah.
and I've come up with one thing that I might add, which is to talk about
Yeah.
citing low impact solar siting,
Oh, okay.
to incorporate some of the,
Oh, which
that
is,
resource.
and where are you finding that information?
so in the main Audubon,
That's in the Audubon one, okay.
well,
I'll review that.
the main Audubon points to this other document, which I don't think we have. So maybe, could I ask John to provide in our next packet, the low impact solar siting design and maintenance resource? It's called the low impact solar siting design and maintenance.
Show the citation. please.
And I'll give you a clue, which is that if you reach out to Beth Woolfolk at the Climate to Thrive, she may
Would you like
be happy
a
to.
copy of it?
Oh, you got that one right there?
That's the
work.
best
Way to go.
practices. Yeah.
That's the low impact, that's really
That's-
what I was just talking
That's
about?
the low impact, yeah. Can't compare it.
Nice work. Nice work. And so, and I don't know if I read that, but it'd be good to read that for our next meeting.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
So you don't have a copy of this?
It's
No.
online, I'd be happy to email
No.
a PDF to the planning board if that's.
Uh,
If John can
email it
keep
to
that.
John,
And then John-
please, and then he puts it in our packets. We get into problems when you start emailing everybody because we can be in FLAA violation.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if there was like one email that went out to the whole planning board, but I.
That's John Larson there.
Our written packets seem to be the best
Okay.
system
Yeah.
that we have right now.
So, remember, if we're gonna do something for November, selectmen have to get it by mid-August, whatever their meeting is in August, I don't know.
Right.
You probably see better than me. There's 2 meetings, I think.
Which
in
color's
August.
the selectmen?
That seems
Well-
unlikely.
That kind of is pushing it.
Yeah,
Just-
yeah. I think that's probably gonna be pushing it too, but, at least at our next meeting, we get a start and maybe get something to send on to Collier.
Who may take a month to get back to us. And it'd be nice to not stress out about that fact and just be like, all right,
Yeah.
like, get back to us when you get back to us, and then we
Yeah,
review it. And then I do think that it'd be nice to have a public hearing before
Oh.
we send it,
oh,
before we
yeah,
send it to the select board,
we would have to have a public hearing,
and then send it.
and then it goes to the selectmen.
Okay, yeah,
They decide whether or not to put it on a warrant, and then they hold a public
Right.
hearing. Well, actually, they hold a public hearing,
You
they
have
hold
to
two.
hold- you have
First,
to-
they hold a public hearing, then they decide whether to put it on the warrant, then they hold another public hearing.
What the planning board has to do, it depends on, do you wanna create a standalone solar ordinance, or do you wanna
And they incorporate it.
incorporate it?
That's a good question.
well, I don't care. What's easier, better?
Yeah, what's the difference?
I think maybe incorporating it into, well, I don't know, now you're gonna get
Existing?
into another question about like, how much do I wanna change about the our site plan review ordinance,
So
which
I would
is,
suggest, purely me, to incorporate it in the land use ordinance, because you have particular uses, just like Bar Harbor
Yep.
does. But they have a whole different structure, they have a town council, and a
right,
town
charter, yeah.
to incorporate it in the land use ordinance. They
Yeah.
create another,
I
That
think
makes
it's better
sense.
to incorporate it.
Yeah,
It may be a bit more difficult to do.
I would like fewer ordinances, not more. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
In fact, for that matter, I think the telecommunications ordinance should be in there too.
that could very well be.
yeah. And that impacts the process a little bit in terms of what kind of, or like, what kind
If
of,
you're only doing them, you actually only have to have one planning board public hearing. Usually you have two for a reason, because at the first one, you're gonna get public input. You get to change
right,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
incorporate the
Yeah.
suggested changes. And then you have the second public hearing. So from then on, it's pretty much smooth sailing.
And I think that, like, I don't think there's any good reason to try to squeeze it into, get it in before August, and so I'd rather just take our time with it, have as many public hearings as we need to have. And
This isn't rocket science, it's solar science.
you got it.
Well, on that note,
I'm satisfied.
so we're in agreement that continue this discussion at our next meeting, get a little more specific, and hopefully our other two members will be here and maybe hammer out something roughly to send on to James.
Yeah.
For his suggestions.
Yeah, for his suggestions, and then go from there. Then we'll have plenty of work dealing with campgrounds and that sort of thing, and then take it up when we have another little bit of a lull.
Sounds great. Jane had her hand up earlier.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, Jane, yeah, you did, and
No,
I said I was gonna get to it, I forgot all
We
about
could
it.
invite Pat to come to one of the public hearings.
I'm sorry,
If
pardon?
we could get Pat to come to one of the
Beth?
public hearings.
You mean Beth?
Beth.
Yeah, Beth, I'm
Got it,
sorry.
yes. Right, yeah, and, you know, do a little bit of education or, yeah, yeah. That's a good idea.
I'd also be
If she's willing to do that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that, and if you think it'd be useful or helpful, I can come to your next planning board meeting.
Yeah,
I don't have to.
yeah, I don't know.
Residents can get kinda ugly.
It's- I don't know if there's any reason to put you through this torture 2 times in a row.
Oh, please, this is nothing compared to Bar Harbor, so.
Hey, I was gonna ask you though, you had public hearings in Bar Harbor, of course, on this. What were, did you find negative comments? Did you find good
That's a good question.
suggestions? Or what?
That's a good question. We had a lot of support at the Bar Harbor, public hearings. There was one woman that voiced concern about, clear cutting, but other than that, there wasn't any pushback from the community.
And did anybody have any good suggestions on how to improve the draft?
No.
Okay.
Oh, that's a plus.
There was a lot of other, more contentious, things on the docket that day.
We know that feeling.
It's like we hold public hearing on this at a campground.
That's
It
right,
seemed like
exactly,
it.
yep, yep.
Well, okay, anybody have anything else? John, you all set?
All set,
Sure? You feed those horses?
not yet.
Oh, okay, they're hungry.
Sun's still high.
Yeah, well. Anybody have any other suggestions for next meeting or anything? Otherwise, we'll set the date and, for July 12th.
Yep.
6 o'clock here and, continued discussion of this, okay?
I'll-
Sound good?
yeah.
Take a motion to that effect.
I'll make a motion to set the next meeting for Tuesday, July 2nd at 6 o'clock here in the Harvey Kelly meeting room.
July 12th.
That's exactly what I meant. Thank you, Beth. July 12th.
I'll second it.
Motion and second on the table to schedule our next meeting for 6 o'clock here, Town Office, Harvey Kelly Meeting Room, July 12th. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? All right, okay. Adjourn, I'll take a motion to adjourn at, what time is it here? The watch, so I can actually see it, 7:06, yeah.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion second on the table to adjourn at 7:06. All in favor? Aye. Okay, unanimous. Thank you, Beth, for showing up. Jane, you too, for showing interest. John, as usual.
I'm the only one getting paid.
Good job. What's that?
You're the only one getting
Hey,
paid.
we make.
No, we're making big bucks
money.
over
If
here.
you find out if.
It's like a $25
I'd
stipend.
like her to come back
But-
and ask her, but.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, well, I guess so. Let me turn off the tape.
Then we can really talk.
I was on Facebook the other day, and somebody was not a community person. And there you've got $600.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they said, it's gonna work out the way they say it's going to.
Yeah, it looks like they're charging